Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, my colleague Russell Berger, both attorneys at Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about litigation holds, and for our audience who might not know what that is, or preservation is what we'll call it as well. Is that when there's litigation, often there is a need to preserve the information that might be relevant. It's something that's often something that companies, or especially companies, need to consider right in the beginning of litigation, because there might be some things that are in place where there might be destruction of information that is either helpful and valuable to the business itself or might need to be preserved. But what are some things that businesses should keep in mind when litigation is pending, Russell, in this regard?
Yeah, well, I would even back up a step. Before litigation is pending, I think it's important to think about, how information is being stored. This isn't, the analog days of there being paper files everywhere. Lots of the information stored electronically that could be relevant, whether it's emails, Word documents, electronic files on a cloud somewhere, text messages. All these things could conceivably be relevant depending on what the litigation issue is. So one, just from an information management perspective as a business, it's good to know kind of where all your information might be. What is your process for aggregating it and maintaining it, and keeping it confidential and keeping it managed? So that's the first part. Is just knowing what information is out there and how you're managing and retaining and destroying it, and whatever your processes are around that. The second part is when you get into a dispute, all that stuff is in theory within the range of what would be discoverable and have to be produced in a litigation. So then, when that happens, you've got to hold on to all that information, all those materials, all those files, because they may have to be produced. And in litigation, there's something called spoliation, which basically means that if you've spoiled the evidence by destroying it, their inferences can be held against you in that context. So you don't want to destroy things, not the least of which because it's in violation of the law, but also because you'll get this bad instruction from a judge to a jury, or you'll just look guilty. So you want to make sure that you have a process in place for holding that information, storing it, saving it, and then being able to transfer it to your legal counsel or to a third party, e-discovery type vendor, so that those files can be processed and reviewed, and whatever's responsive can be produced to the other side.
Yeah, I think one of the challenging things as a company when you go to do this collection, or if you're thinking about it proactively ahead of time, is that obviously a lot of employees at this point use their personal devices for business. And it's, a challenging time when you go to an employee and say, hey, I need your personal cell phone to what you consider your personal cell phone to get all of this data and information off of it, right? And a lot of like commingling of things, and people, I definitely have seen clients where a lot of things are in text messages instead of emails, right? And that's a lot to comb through. It's a lot for us as attorneys to go through, as opposed to potentially, in an email setting could be a little bit easier. So it's something to consider as well from an employment perspective, about setting those expectations in your policies, and then also making sure that employees are clear that when you're using your personal devices for work purposes, that can definitely open you up to your device being collected in a case, or a company having an interest in trying to get that information. So that can be a little bit of a strain sometimes on the employee-employer relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And depending, obviously, if clients start sending you text messages, you're probably likely to respond. But the best thing you do often is get it back into the email or back into kind of a managed form of communication. And from an employer standpoint, are you providing the right apps, the right tools, so that your employees can communicate with clients, customers, whoever, in a manner that is protected and secured from the business's perspective.
Yeah, and there's so many great resources out there now too, where it seems like people, from a company perspective, where it seems like someone's getting a text message, but actually they're typing it on their computer, right? It's coming from a program that looks like text messages, but is not, so there's a lot of different options to still allow for that flexibility that might make sense in the client, employee relationship, or yeah, we definitely see it a lot just within dealing with our own clients, as you mentioned, Russell. So, yeah, but there's a lot of good options out there to explore. But as we always say on OK at Work, being proactive and thinking about these things always helpful. So,
That's right.
well, thanks, Russell. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.